Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Corporate Cardboard, a board game variety show where we talk about all things board game. As always, I'm here with my co-host Mackenzie. Mackenzie, how are you today?
I'm doing great, enjoying a great cold day, but things are good here. I've got some coffee and I'm ready to talk about some board games.
Fantastic. Now, with that being said, let's go on to our first segment, which is what we've been playing. So this is where we talk about the board games that we've been playing in between last episode and this episode, and giving some generic brief kind of initial thoughts on those games. So, Mackenzie, what have you been playing?
Okay, so the first game that I've been playing is just got delivered 2 days ago. And this is Role Player Adventures. So this came bundled with Cartographer's Heroes, and so I found this. I was like, wow, I want to jump into it right away. So Role Player Adventures is a campaign system where you're going to be importing your characters from the original role player. So that character you rolled up, you actually will take its stats as well as its items and create a hand of cards. Now this is ultimately a dice placement and hand management game. And I had no idea going in. I didn't really understand what sort of game this would be. So you're going to be going through this adventure, which is all text-based, and be doing skill tests as well as combats. Now, the skill test is kind of the meat of the game as well as the combats, and what you're going to be doing is assembling a dice pool. You'll have different stats, stamina, charisma, and you'll spend your little points in there. So say I have 3 charisma, I'll spend 1 of my charisma points, and that will become fatigue. Once you have enough fatigue that matches your health, you become exhausted, and that's kind of how you'll lose the game. So fortunately, there's failing forward in this game. So even if you do lose, you will continue playing. So there's a death section at the back. So when you do become exhausted, essentially you resolve this special death encounter and then they do some healing and they push you back in. So you're never out for good. You do get to play out the story, but I'll be straight up with you. These dice tests, these skill checks are brutal. We played the first mission and the second mission, and we died in both of them. It was insane. So these skill checks, so the way they work, you build that dice pool, you spend your stamina. So you take damage every time you add specific dice to your pool. If you don't add dice, you'll draw random dice. And then you'll see these numbers here. These are the exact numbers that you need to roll on that exact color to fill them in. If you're doing a fight like you have here, you'll have 3 rounds to do so, but every dice face that you don't cover, you're going to lose something, whether it be money or wounds or XP. So you really want to kill these things as fast as possible, and you do this through card play. So you have a hand of cards that are from your item cards, and you'll play them one at a time up to your card play limit, and that allows you to modify your dice. So maybe you'll flip dice, you'll do rerolls, but this reminds me a lot of One Deck Dungeon, where sometimes you just don't roll well, and sometimes your cards in your hand are just not going to work for the dice that you pulled. Or sometimes you just pull dice that don't work for the values you want. It's especially prominent with lower player count games because your stats are that's it. You have those stats for the entire campaign, that entire mission. So you have to do what you can with your limited amount of stamina. And every time you do put in work, you're taking extra damage. Now, luckily, that fail forward system is there. So you still progress in the story. So it represents like you tried your best, but you failed. So it's not totally lost. You still get to enjoy it. It's still fun. I really like the way it plays. And there's a lot of creativity in the card play, and you're constantly adding new cards to your hand. There's no card limit, so you have lots of choices when you're playing. And the way that the cards work is every fight you can re-pick up all the cards that you used in each fight, essentially. Same thing with skill checks. And so there are some cards that are like once per encounter, and then they'll be gone for the rest of the encounter. And then there are some cards that are like once per cycle, so you can rest and get all those back. So there's some cool choices in here. But ultimately, I like the system, but man, I think it's difficult. This is one that I'm just so subject to the dice that I don't know how to approach this one. I think I'm doing the best I can. I've read the rules multiple times because sometimes I get them wrong. So I'm trying to just make sure I'm doing it correct. But whew, brutal. What do you think of the Role Player series, the Role Player Adventure series?
I actually haven't played any of the role player games. I remember a couple of years ago when Role Player came out. It came out pretty much at the same time as Sagrada did, if I'm right.
You were correct.
And I was kind of at that crossroads. Which ones do I go for? I chose to go for Sagrada rather than Role Player. And then since then, I've kind of not looked back at either of them. So yeah, I haven't played either of them. I thought maybe I'm going to play a game of that weight with probably my family or someone, and they're not going to be into the whole meta Dungeons and Dragons theme, and something like Sagrada they would certainly jump on board with. But I've heard really good things about it. This one, is it more of an experience in terms of going through the storybook rather than the mechanisms themselves, and that's kind of a more of a not tacked on thing, but more of a taking a back seat to the story?
I think that they're both pretty present because
Okay.
you're spending time on that skill check. It's definitely something that the game is built around of gathering these things, and the card system makes a lot of sense. So it definitely feels like they're both equally strong in this game, and that's the game. So the game really is the story and the skill checks. So that's the game as a whole. So if that's not something you're interested in, stay away from this because that's all it is. But for me, this is one that I'm enjoying. It's challenging, it's fun. I don't know if I'll keep coming back to it because it is that brutal. But yeah, it's one that I'm enjoying. If you want to add the expansion in, it is extremely easy. It just adds some backstory, so nothing too crazy. It doesn't add new maps or anything like that, but it allows you to have some more fleshed out characters. So luckily, the expansion isn't too crazy as well. You can put that in right from the get-go. So that's my thoughts on role player adventures so far. Go ahead.
Okay. Is there a lot of content there, Mackenzie? Is there a lot to go through, or
so there are
can you
10
replay
missions. There are 10 missions and a side quest mission. And you can play the old scenarios because there's very much branching paths. So your first decision you get is like, hey, are you going to go to this place or this place? And your choice is going to drastically change what you decide to do. So I love that there's so many choices. And because those tests are so brutal, if you do pass a test, you're going to get something really cool out of it. So, and that's going to completely change too. So I think that the story system works really well, actually. And so I'm enjoying the narrative aspect. If I was just getting crushed by skill checks, I probably wouldn't continue because it's just, I don't know. Oh, I probably would just to finish it, but we'll see.
Okay, cool. Role player adventure. I know there's a big following for role player, so I'm sure it's going to be a successful game. Okay, so I've been playing Witchstone, which is actually the 2021 release by Ryan Knizia, and with a co-designer called Martino Chiquera, if that's how you pronounce it properly. This one, if I didn't know this was a Ryan Knizia game, I would never have ever have said this was by him. It is so out there and so different to anything that that I've played of his before anyway. I know the kind of core system in terms of playing these tiles onto your player board and trying to kind of connect these symbols together to get more powerful bonuses has been used before in one of his designs, but the rest of it is really or as I said, it's so out there. It's like a point salad style game that makes me feel of a Steffenfeld game. It does. If this is put in front of me with no designer accreditation on it, I would say this was 100% a Steffenfeld game. So basically, this is a bunch of mini games where you are trying to either go around this pentagram here and get these little tokens and points along the way, and the more you do that, you kind of get the first dibs on the most powerful ones. You've got this big kind of crystal ball in the center of the table here, where you're trying to connect these routes and get points for doing so, and then you can spawn witches and travel down these routes and kind of deposit other witches there to get other kind of follow-up bonuses. But the more you're doing these very simple actions, the potential to trigger follow actions or kind of that domino effect just is quite remarkable. And there's, by the start of the game and by the end of the game, the turns you're taking are just poles apart as you take strength. Initially taking strength 1 or strength 2 actions, and then by the end of it, you're taking strength 4 or 5 actions, and then you're getting a strength 3 actions as a fallout of that, and then you're getting a strength 2 actions as a fallout for that. You're collecting cards to get in-game bonuses. You're trying to manage your player board in order to line up these tokens, and there are these gems away, which become a bit of a pain because you have to move them out of the way. As you can see here, these gems are like blockers, and as you place these tokens down, they just get in the way. So you can actually use this other symbol in order to push them off the board to get that bonus as well. Just so much point salad goodness in this game. I'm really impressed with it. Initially, I thought the rules were so digestible and so simple. I was thinking, is this going to be a bit too simple? But while the rules themselves are easy, it's that potential to string those bonuses together and just to get that edge on your opponent. It's a real blast to play, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'd be very surprised if this one doesn't end up in my top 10 of the year. I think it's that good. That is Witchstone. That's my recommendation for a 2021 release Ryan Knizia game. It's really good. And this one, Mackenzie.
Whoa, so that's high recommendation from you. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like you said, if it has a simple rule set, sounds great, right? Like if it's got that much depth into it. So I'm excited. So do Do you notice any Reiner Knizia design the more you play it? Do you notice little things that may harken back to his earlier stuff, or do you think it's completely influenced by this additional designer?
No, I think the tile placement system, when you're matching the symbols on your own player mat, that is taken from one of his games called Ingenious, I think. I've not played it, but I've heard that's what it's taken from. But it's such a clean mechanism, and one that's so puzzly that it doesn't feel dated. It still feels fresh. But the rest of it, all these mini games, it's kind of pulls apart from what he normally does. So as I said, it made me feel like a Stefan Feld game. Some of them even felt like direct, almost not copies, but very similar to some of the mini games in Trajan. But yeah, I think the way that these things come together is so fun. And I played this with my mum the other day, and she absolutely loved it. She thought it was so much fun. And again, particularly when you start making these runaway combos, it's just an absolute blast.
Whoa, okay. So very low barrier to entry. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I like this. Excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, recommendation if you like Knizia and you like your point salad Euros, Witchstone is one to look out for.
Holy cow.
What else have you been playing, Mackenzie?
All right, so the second game that I've been playing is the Mad Titan Shadow expansion for Marvel Champions. So this brings Thanos into the Marvel Champions world, essentially, along with 4 other scenarios. Now, if you don't want to know anything, maybe skip this part or tune down. But I won't get into any heavy spoilers on mechanics or anything. But in the box, once you start slaving things, you'll see them. There's going to be 5 new scenarios, and 3 of them have to do with Thanos. So you've got the Black Order, so you have Ebony Maw, and then you have this tower defense scenario where you're fighting Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive at the same time, and then you have Thanos himself. And they do something really cool with Thanos where they use the Infinity Gauntlet, and the Infinity Gauntlet is its own encounter set. And I think that makes so much sense because you can now give the Infinity Gauntlet to any character, which is really cool. It just makes them super powerful. And I think that's great. I think that's a great way to introduce it into the game because you can now increase the difficulty on any character you see fit by giving them the gauntlet. And that's very thematic. It makes a lot of sense here. In addition to that, you also have 2 new characters that are based off of Asgard. So you have one character, Hela, that you'll be fighting against, as well as Loki. And you'll have a lot of fun, very challenging missions in those 2. So I was quite surprised. I thought that Thanos was not the hardest character in this entire set. So it was cracking me up that I was having so much trouble with some of the other characters instead. So have fun with this one. The scenarios are fun and they're well done. I was quite surprised. And this is one that I'm really enjoying. But the other thing that I really want to touch on are the 2 new characters. So you have Spectrum, which is Photon, and she has this ability of form changing, and she's very straightforward in what she does. She'll be switching back from form to form. Each form is better at attacking or defending or thwarting. And then you also have Adam Warlock, which has a very weird deck restriction where you can only have a singleton for each card in his deck. So you can play all the colors, but you can only play a single copy of each card, which means that you get a lot of options. However, this game is all about consistency. So it kind of sucks because you're looking through your deck, but it's a deck of one of. So man, you are not going to get the cards you want very often. So you have some big choices here with which character you want to play. Someone who's a bit more straightforward or someone who's a bit more random, but has a lot more toolbox nature. So some interesting choices here. I'll be straightforward. Not my favorite heroes, but the scenarios are really, really cool. There are also some really great player cards. So if you're a fan of Marvel Champions, this is a no-brainer buy. Oh, having a great time with it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Marvel Champions seems to be going from strength to strength, really. Obviously, it's been a massive hit for the company. So you find that sometimes these big IP games go one of 2 ways. They have they're 5 minutes in the sun and then they tank. But Marvel Champions clearly defied that, and it's again still going extremely strong. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I kind of almost feel like I should have played this when it came out, but I feel like I've kind of missed the boat now, and I'm not really that willing to go into it personally. I want to play it, but I'm not gonna start acquiring the stuff for it. But obviously, it's a really solid design and more content, fantastic.
I think that's my favorite part of these cooperative LCGs is that you don't have to have everything. So you really can start whenever you feel like I started Lord of the Rings, the LCG, when it was like 7 years in or something like that, which is ridiculous. So you can really take it at your own pace. So I like that model exists. And I think that's why the cooperative is so successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely more. Yeah, inviting model, then as I said, if you've missed it completely, at least you can still go and get these expansions and get the same stuff as everybody else who got it originally. Okay, just a comment here from Enrique, talking about Witchstone. I think ingenious plus failed influence. Knizia is genius. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that's exactly my taste of gaming, Enrique. And it'd be interesting to see if he was actually influenced by Knizia. Mechanically, it seems like he did, but maybe he wasn't. I don't know. Okay, so I've also been playing a Feast for Odin. I say I've been playing. I've played it once. I played it last night for the first time, of course. This is quite a beast of a game. I've rated it here initially 6.5. I think that might be a bit unfair. I think I will up it to a 7. Well, the name describes a feast for Odin. This is like a feast for worker placement spots. So there's so many different options in this game. It's a Uwe Rosenberg, pretty full-on one. There's quite a lot of going on in this game, but I think actually the game does quite a good job of holding your hand through the game, but by the player aid board. It clearly runs through all the phases, and most of them are pretty simple, and the bulk of the actions are just simple worker placement. But it's a game, I suppose, the complexity is ramped up in terms of its scope and kind of width rather than the actual intricacies and complexity in the game. But there are so many different things to do here. I kind of feel like I'm really kind of scratching the surface because I don't feel qualified to give a final thoughts opinion on this one, because I was really lost in this one because we started the game not really knowing where to go because the game is so sandboxy. It offers you so many different things you can do. Do you want to go for these boats and start hunting and go whaling? Do you want to start acquiring these new islands and filling them up with these different pieces to get more income, more bonuses? Do you want to start breeding livestock? Do you want to try and get all these unique tiles and put them on your board and convert goods to others? There is just a plethora of options at all times here. And Mackenzie and I were actually discussing before how I was a little bit apprehensive with this one because worker placement, one of the key hooks in these type of games is the rush to get to the spots that you want to go first. And I thought because there were so many options in this game, potentially that magic might get lost. And I can clearly say now that that's not the case. There is a real tension to get to the spots that you want to get to. And just because there is loads of spots here, the game is bigger. So it's almost like playing 4 worker placement games at once. And if you're diving into one part of that game, then the incentive to get to those spots is going to be just as high as if it was a regular medium weight worker placement game. But with a game with so much going on, basically the key mechanism in the game, or the key way you're getting points or not losing points, is by trying to fill up your player boards with these different shapes. So you've got that classic polyomino Uwe Rosenberg magic, which he's known for. And I will say, the more I've thought about this one, it's starting to fit into place. I'm starting to think, yeah, that was better than I thought it was at the time. The first half of the game, I was a bit overwhelmed. I just didn't know what to do. I felt very sandboxy. I'm just not getting anywhere here. We didn't do terribly well in terms of points, but I think that's actually kind of intrigued me a bit more and want to do better than the previous game. So I'm actually quite happy that I didn't do well on the first game because it gives me that reason to go back to it and try and explore what else the game has to offer. But very, very brief initial thoughts there. And of course, the more I play it, I'll be able to kind of articulate my thoughts better. But for now, definitely intrigued, and I will be playing it again. And so that's a Feast for Odin, obviously a massively popular worker placement game.
So super excited that you finally got a copy, and I'm so happy that you are ready to try it again. I mentioned earlier when we were discussing that those island boards are really, really important because that's a great way to get amazing bonus income. And this game, surprisingly, not just with the worker placement and the tenseness of where to allocate your workers, it's also about getting good income bonuses because a lot of those are going to give you more tiles to cover more places, and it's kind of like a chain of events. So you've got some good choices here. So whenever I teach people this game, I always make sure to press that, hey, don't worry about putting all your pieces on when you get them. Just gather as much as you can, get a good place to put them. And then when it hits that income phase, then everybody kind of starts and places stuff. So that's usually the best way that I jump into this. It helps with the AP, and it also helps with kind of just a general arc of the game.
Yeah, and that's good. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, one of the things I'd like about this game was the freedom to play around with your tiles regardless of turn structure. You can really put that on your board when you want, and you're not just it's not as rigid as going to the spot to place tiles. You can just kind of play around with it, have a think, and when it gets to that crucial stage, as Mackenzie said, that's when you can commit to something. So that was quite nice. I did think that was a welcome addition. So yeah, still initial thoughts there, and I'll give it a few more plays before I get that final rating locked in and get a review out. But yeah, A Feast for Odin, finally got to play it, and yeah, enjoyed it. What else have we
All
got there,
right.
Mackenzie?
So the last game that I've been playing is the newest expansion for Western Legends. This is Western Legends Blood Money. So this is just a week of crazy story-driven goodness, lots of luck fests. Are you ready? So this is Western Legends. This is a game that's actually surprisingly, I guess, less lucky, less dice rolling. Nah, that's not true. You're still drawing cards. There's still a heck of a lot of luck in here. So Western Legends has you playing as cowboys. You're going around and blasting each other. You could be a marshal and be working for the sheriff, or you can be an outlaw and do your best to rob and steal and cheat for your way to victory. So you're trying to generate these legendary points, and you do so by just doing standard Western stuff. And that includes all sorts of things. You can participate in the story that's going on. You can go gambling to the casinos. You can rob the train. You can go hang out with the bandits. You can rustle cattle. There's pretty much anything you could think of. This newest expansion has added that. So the biggest new components that were added are deeds. So first off, you can actually buy the locations in the game. This is surprisingly not as impactful as we were thinking. So it costs about like $80 or something like that to buy a location. And that gives you a one-time action that you can use in order to kind of use that location. For example, we owned the gambling den, so you could spend it to draw a couple cards, and then you could transport to the gambling den. Each of these deeds also has end game scoring, so that's kind of neat. You could build a strategy towards that and score all your points at the end as opposed to during the game. But we felt that if you were focusing on that, then you weren't really scoring these giant heaps of points, and you were waiting on others to end the game as opposed to yourself. So it didn't seem that powerful with the deeds. The other thing it adds is the traveling tradesman, which I really like because they sell these legendary items. They're really cool. But that traveling tradesman is going to be moving around the board, so you actually have to go find it. So it's a little mini quest. And the last big thing that it adds is the new story track. So the way that it's changed is they add these gigantic cards, and these cards have a bit more flavor. They have events that immediately impact the game. For example, when we played, one of the cards that got played was, hey, the sheriff has died, and so they're looking for a new sheriff. So he's on his way. So the sheriff is going to come back when these two things happen. But in the meantime, remove the sheriff from the game. So all of a sudden, there was no sheriff to stop any of the wanted players. So everyone was just like, it's the Wild West. Let's go. And so in like that span, I went and robbed the train. I robbed the bank. I got to the top of the wanted track. This is the first game I've ever won playing as the wanted player. It was so funny. So I really, really like the new story system. I was quite surprised. So I think this is a very welcome expansion just for that story system. It works so, so well. And of course, with the newest Kickstarter, they've made a consolidated rule book, and that's really nice. It's just this big index. So it's really easy to jump into the game now. And if anybody has a question, there's these great player aids that'll help you out. Surprisingly impressed. We played a 4-player game of this, and it was so smooth. We had a great time. I'm quite happy about this one. The last thing I want to touch on is the card system. When you're playing, you're going to have a hand of cards, and those cards are all multi-use. They have actions on them, as well as you can use them in combat, or you can play with them as poker cards when you're playing poker. So you have lots of different choices, and I think that card system as a whole is just really, really good because it's all multi-use, and that's just really appreciated. But it's done in such a simple, elegant way. I really like that. So that's Western Legends Blood Money. Lots of new additions, but one that I'm enjoying. Have you had a chance to join this Western foray?
I have not, but despite you saying, there's quite a significant element of luck in this game, this is one that I really want to try, actually. I think it sounds like it's a game that really does, almost guarantees that kind of memorable moments and the moments that you take away from the game, and years to come, you'll remember what happened and you can discuss and have a laugh and that. So yeah, I actually do love the way that all the different things you can do. Again, more that sandboxy thing. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And it just sounds like a really good canvas to kind of to play that and enjoy that kind of experience. So I like the theme. I like kind of Western themes in general. And as I said, I love that idea of the multi-use cards, trying to make poker hands in poker. But I think do you play poker hands and actually do to fight as well?
You play Texas Hold'em if you're playing poker. So you'll add 2 cards from your hand to the game. And then if you are fighting, you just pick a card in your hand because all the cards have a strength value, which is aces high, or you can use them for their effect. So some of the cards will have like reactions or ways to prevent wounds. So you might pick a lower card to get a better ability in combat. So there's a cool choice there.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, definitely want to try it. Hopefully one day that will happen. But yes, as for now, yeah, I definitely one on my radar that I definitely want to experience for myself. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. Okay, so the final game I'm going to talk about is one that my good friend here, Mackenzie, recommended to me. And well, what a man, what a game this is. This is absolutely phenomenal. This is Capital Lux 2 Generation. So Deluxe, to be honest, this was a game that wasn't even on my radar before Mackenzie started touting it to me and saying how good it was. I know Mackenzie's already kind of well versed in these kind of card games, and this game is so good. It's not even, it's blew my mind how well this one plays. So with such a simple system. I've only actually played the basic setup, and I think even that alone is an amazing game. So this is a game which basically you have a hand of cards, you're drafting a pair at a time, and you're going to end up with 6 cards, I believe, and then you're going to be playing them either in front of you or in front of the capital. And the idea is that you're basically trying to get as close as you can with your cards to the value of the capital. It's almost like, describe it as a game of, well, we talked about Texas Hold'em. It's a bit like blackjack, but with a moving target. But when you go to these certain spots in the middle, because of course you're going to have to go there, otherwise you're not going to get any points yourself, you get a bonus or some kind of power that you can use. So in the very basic setup, you've got one that, the blue target or the blue place in the city lets you kind of change that target by either moving the value up or value down, so you've got a bit of play there, but only you know it and not your opponent knows it. So maybe you've tanked that value, so they're going to go bust when they think they were safe. Or you've got ones that let you draw cards, which can be a double-edged sword, because drawing cards is not always great, because if a person plays all their cards, then you're forced to play yours in front of you, which could in fact make you go bust again. You've got ones that will just give you coins, which are a great kind of mitigation tool and just pure points themselves. And the other one actually lets you take a card from the city, the lowest value card, and put it into your personal town or your personal board. And the fallout of these actions, although it might sound very simple on the face of it, is huge. Like, this is a game where it really does put you in a hard position of managing your hand. Sometimes you don't even want any of these cards. You're going to have to play them, but doing it right, and you might think, I'm a bit stuck here. But if you play it at the right place at the right time, you can actually get yourself out of these horrible conundrums by using that and using those powers to your benefit. And I love this also ongoing tension where there's 3 rounds in the game. You got to try and keep your cards alive from start to finish, because if you keep all of them alive, then they're going to be pure points at the end. But as soon as you go over that bust limit, you're starting again from scratch, which can of course be devastating. It's remarkable. I mean, if you like these clever card games, the simplicity and elegance of them, like Hanamikoji comes to mind. This one does fit that niche for me. I think this one feels timeless. The fact that there is so much replayability in the game, because all the different locations are variable, so they're like modular. You can take them out and put new ones in, so all the locations do something else. It is, what a game this is. This is fantastic. I mean, I can't believe this one doesn't get talked about more. Yeah, outstanding game, outstanding.
So happy to hear that you're loving it. A couple things to just add really quick. That modularity piece I think is so cool, because as you play this game, that is going to change the value of certain cards when you draft, because now all of a sudden this effect does this. Oh my gosh, I better hold some of these in the draft, or the effects may get better as the game progresses. That is so awesome. And then speaking of the game progressing, I love the fact that if you're winning these districts from round to round, you take cards from the center and put them into like a bonus scoring pile. But that also changes the amount in the center. So now all of a sudden your target just become lower, and you had to try to get as close as possible. So now all of a sudden you have more of incentive to play to the center. So there's so many cool things that just make so much sense. And as you said, elegant system. It just works so well. And there's just so much variety with those different modules. This is a timeless classic, in my opinion. This is one that I'm always going to be excited to play.
Yeah,
amazing.
So many layers, so many. Yeah, it really is a game that unravels, and you realize, at first you might not think there's much to it, but then you quickly realize that there's more to it than you initially think. Okay,
I'm so happy you love this. So happy you love this.
Yeah. I'm happy as well. So that's Witchstone, Feast for Odin, and Capital Lux for me, and Role Player Adventures, Marvel Champions, Mad Titan Shadow, and Western Legends Blood Money for Mackenzie. And I think generally, we all have positive things to say about all those games, which is quite nice. Okay, so let's move on then to the next segment, which is crowdfunding. So I know this month, Mackenzie, or this episode, we've actually both selected the same game, and it's a game you just mentioned. So what have we been interested by this month?
So this month is home to some great projects. This one in particular, though, is one that we know is amazing. You could back this on, how did you come upon this, Dan?
So yeah, I literally just I knew it was coming out, but I didn't do any research on the actual game mechanism itself. I don't even know what's different about this and the original, simply because I had so much praise of the original game and I love it that much that this was an instant back for me, because the name Hanamikoji, just for me.
So Hanamikoji Geisha's Road is the project here. Super, super excited. This is a new standalone game using the same core Hanamikoji system, but it also includes lots of little expansions that you can also use for the original game and this new version. So Hanamikoji Geisha's Road runs the same way. On your turn, you're going to have those little action tokens. You flip them, and that's going to allow you to play a certain number of cards. However, in this one, the points of the different sections are tied to locations on the board. So you'll be moving these tokens around, and if you land on specific areas, that's going to add points to them. So not only do you have to worry about placing specific cards for specific values, but they're also tied to that board. So you want that geisha to land on the spot, so it's actually gaining points. And then the sooner a geisha moves, the more points it's going to be worth. But that being said, you're giving more information on that. So think something like, and this is a weird comparison, Camel Up, where the sooner you commit to something, the better it is going to be for you. But the later you'll have more information onto knowing what you're actually going for. So there's some really cool things going on here. I'm shocked that it's not doing gangbusters here. It is pretty cheap, so that makes sense. But I think that this is just like Dan said, this is a no-brainer. Like if you have a person to play 2-player games with, jump into this. I just taught this to somebody yesterday, and we had a blast with it. Just the way it changes the way you think. I really like this game. Dan, what are your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, staying true to what Hanamikoji is welcome. It's got a certain type of brand in it. Although it looks like it's ramped up its complexity and more things going on in this one, I do like the way it's trying to remain true to what the original game is in terms of being simple but still brain-racking, agonizing decisions. So yeah, it looks like a step up from the original, where, to be honest, the original is pretty much as simple as it gets in terms of its mechanisms. But again, that thought decision is there. But this one looks like it's maybe built up a bit and more going on, just to add even more brain burner goodness. But yeah, really excited to see what this game has to offer when it's actually on the table.
And I'll be honest, the thing that I'm most excited for is honestly the expansions for the original game. The new version could become too cluttered. It could not be something that I'm really excited to play over the original. And that's okay. That can happen sometimes with these sequel games. But as long as you have additional components and expansions for the base game, that's a win for me. So you can use the tiles in either version, and these tiles are basically replacement tiles for the actions. So they're going to change up the way the game plays by giving each player an identical set of these action tiles. So I'm excited to see how that works, and that's really what I'm probably more excited than the sequel is for those additional expansions.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as I said, the fact that it does try to stay true to that simple formula, but it can, because a game like Hanamikoji is so delicately balanced, I feel like maybe putting too much into it could be a recipe for disaster. Who knows? But I'm going to try and trust into it. I'm going to try and go into this game with, just trusting in the design, because the original was that good. So yeah, guess both of us support this one. We both chose the same game for our crowdfunding, and that is Hanamikoji Geisha's Road. Okay, so moving on then, we're going on to the news section. I will say I've got no news to cover here, but I know Mackenzie wanted to touch on something.
I thought this just was I thought this just was a really fun talking point just in general. And this is specifically games about games. So very meta, but this is in a very unique way. So this is from the Unlock series. And so Unlock is published by Asmodee, and they are jumping into their other properties, which is really, really cool. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to be playing this Unlock escape game, very similarly to like the Star Wars version, where you're in the Star Wars universe exploring, but this time you are in a board game universe. So this original one, I believe it has Ticket to Ride as one of the featured games here. And you actually are going to be in that Ticket to Ride space, exploring the trains, trying to solve the mysteries on this. Now, I don't really know the lore behind Ticket to Ride, so I don't really know what to expect, but you have some really cool games you're going to be jumping into. You also have, as you can see there, Pandemic and Mysterium. And so 3 big hitters that you're going to be able to explore and see the world. So I'm excited. I don't know how excited I am to jump into Pandemic and relive the the virus. So that's probably the one that I'm probably least excited for. But I think Mysterium and trying to get clues from a ghost sounds like a great idea for an escape room. And same thing with the train system. So one of my favorite escape room experiences was the Murder on the Orient Express from the Exit games. So I'm excited to see what they do with the unlock system for Ticket to Ride. So curious to see how this plays out. But I think this is just a really fun concept of taking existing games that you enjoy and kind of opening them in a new space. It's almost like a weird sequel game, but not at all. But you get to enjoy the property you love in a new, unique way. What do you think, Dan? What's a game that you would like to see in the unlock setting?
Ooh. Most of my games don't have any theme whatsoever, so I'm gonna have
That's okay.
I'm gonna have a quick look around. Let's say, oh, that'll tell you what, good one. Grand Austria Hotel. That'd be fun. One in a nice swanky hotel. There we go. But yeah, this idea of, as you said, meta having IPs based on previous board games and using those IPs for new board games. I think this could be a new trend because I know Jamie Stagmeyer from Stonemaier Games, he'd released a new roll and write game, and I believe all the theme of that game is the other game. So there's like a scythe section, there's a Euphoria section. So it could be a thing, and I think it's probably a good business move and a good strategic move to promote your games with other games. So I think it's quite clever and something that's probably going to be a forward trend. So interesting. And as I said, I'm not terribly interested in Unlock itself, but the concept, again, using your own games or existing games, popular ones, of course, is a win-win, I think, for these companies.
I think so. And I think even if they went like the extra step and did like maybe additional promos or something like that, I think that'd be kind of cool to have it become even that more cross-compatible. So very neat, super excited.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on then. We're going to go on to our component appreciation. So this is where we talk about a particular card or physical component from a board game and talk about why we like it, why we don't like it, or just why we find it interesting. So, Mackenzie, what have we got today? What's your choice?
All right, so I've been playing a lot of Terraforming Mars recently, go figure. A classic engine building game of creating project cards and moving around. But the thing that sets this game apart are the corporation cards. At the start of the game, you receive a corporation that determines kind of your special, unique ability, as well as some prelude cards and some starting project cards. You kind of form a hand based on these things, and that's your initial strategy. So as you play, you're going to draft more cards into your hand and be able to build towards this corporation's ability. So what I chose was a corporation that I had never seen before, and I imagine it's from some of the new promo packs. So maybe the big box. I know when we got Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, we ordered some of the promos from the big box. And this one in particular is the Prystar Corporation. So Prystar starts you off with quite a bit of money, but you actually are going to lose points at the start of the game. In addition to losing cash at the beginning, losing points, and these are particularly from the Terraform rating you gain whenever you help the planet. Every round that you don't help the planet, you get extra money and you get a point. So this is such a weird faction because it actively encourages you to not help terraform Mars. You're focused on money, the points, generating things that are outside of the planet. It's such a fascinating corporation and one that I had quite a lot of fun playing with because it's very different from what I like to do. When I play this game, I generally like to finish the game as quick as possible, because a lot of people are sitting there building their engines and they're focused on, oh, if I play this, it'll pay out in 8 turns. Like, too bad there's only 4 turns left because I'm too busy throwing asteroids and things like that. So I tend to like to, rush the game a little bit. But this is probably the longest game of Terraforming Mars I've ever played, because I didn't help the planet at all. There was one round where I did, and it was kind of one of those things where I saved a bunch of money, was able to do it, still got my bonuses, but then just in one turn, I like helped the planet like 15 times, something ridiculous. So it was that way at the end of the round, I didn't get penalized as much. So I just got a single penalty. So it is so interesting, because this is one of those cards that's going to change the way you play from turn 1. And I love that. I love that about Terraforming Mars, how they can offer that through their corporation cards. So that's Price Star. Such a strange card, but one that I really enjoy.
Okay, cool. It's hard for me to comment on this one because I've not got that grounding of playing Terraforming Mars. I've never played the game, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how different this one is to the other ones, but yeah, I quite like the idea of you're not wanting to contribute at all, which is quite funny. Okay, so I don't know what to add on that one, because again, I've not played it, but I know it's a massively successful game, and the corporation seemed like they add a lot of flavor and a lot of spice to the game itself. Cool. So that is the Pristar, was it?
Yeah, Pristar.
Yeah, Pristar Corporation for Terraforming Mars. Okay, my one is not quite as clever as Mackenzie's. Mine is purely based on looks and the kind of novelty factor. I'm talking about a game called Celestia. Celestia is a very light, push your luck style game. I'm just trying to get a picture up here what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the airship of this game, which is a physical cardboard airship where you have player pawns in them, because the idea of this game is that you're trying to almost lure your opponents, because it's kind of a semi-cooperative style game. And you're trying to lure them into staying in this airship for as long as they can, with the idea of trying to make them crash and burn, because if you run out of these certain cards to overcome these different elements and things getting in the way, then you could potentially crash and burn and not get any points, or choose to jump out earlier and to collect points for doing so. But the actual physical component, once my internet catches up, is really impressive. It's so cute looking, and I love the fact that it's a cardboard construct, but the actual player pieces themselves are just your standard throwback, your normal pawns you'd expect to see. And that the mix between the elaborate cardboard component with the sorry, it's on the wrong screen there, with the traditional board game pieces, I think is such a cool blend of things. I think it's just wonderful. So if I can finally catch up here, sorry, my internet is not good at all.
It's all good, Dan.
We'll get there. Anyway, I'll get the picture up. But Mackenzie, have you played Celestia before?
This is a blind spot for me, actually. So I've heard lots of good things. As you said, I've seen the piece before. I think it's quite cute. But this is one that looks very inviting. The theme is whimsical. I like the idea of, sailing around in an airship. It's something that just hits me right. So this is one that I do want to try. I've been trying a lot of these small games here. I've tried 10 the other day, and I just like push your luck mechanisms as a whole.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there we go. There's a picture there. So you can see you've got the airship with all the different player pieces in them. You're sailing along these different tiles along the way. But again, I love that mix of the old traditional and the new flashy board game components. It just looks really cool and it pops off the table. But I'm interested to hear that you played 10. What was the initial review on that one?
I thought it was fine. Nothing crazy. We only played it 2, but it was enjoyable. I mean, I've heard some polarizing opinions on it. Like, some people love it, some people hate it. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was too far in either direction.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's certainly on my radar, that one. I'll pick it up when I can get my hands on it. Okay, so there we go. Opponent appreciation. We've got the Pristar Corporation for Terraforming Mars and the little Zeppelin from Celestia. Okay, so moving on then, we've got this or that. So this is a section or segment where we put 2 things in the board game space against head-to-head manner, and decide what was the result. Because we put these a poll on our community pages on our YouTube channels, and let you make the decision to see what was the outcome. So what was the question this episode, Mackenzie?
So our question last episode was tactics or strategy. So that was the audience question here, and I know that we said that we really like the blend of it, but I personally like to lean more into the tactics portion. I like making quick decisions, and I really like kind of bending and being flexible to the flow of the game. What was your get a quick refresher? What was your answer for this one?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm with you. I was with the blend, but if I had to choose between the other, I like having not forced strategy, but I love having the need to plan ahead, because I think that's a cool thing that kind of introduces a whole new thought space into gaming, really, and it kind of stretch or exercise a whole new muscle that you don't normally get to explore. So yeah, I went for strategy. You went for tactics, and here are the results.
Yeah, so as you can see, even one of the comments here, we have Michael Newsom. He basically agrees with you to a T. He says he likes strategic games that require long-term planning, something satisfying about forming a plan and executing it successfully. Absolutely, when you see your hard work pay off. And so, but he is learning to like more tactical games. And as you can see, the poll here is more leaning to tactical games. So you see tactical being the forefront, particularly in these large adventure games with dice chucking and rolling. And then in more of these Euro games, you're focused. You always have some element of strategy. So I think it is a good, healthy mix of the two make a perfect game, in my opinion. I think having both of those is very key. But yeah, what are your final thoughts on this one, Dan?
Yeah, I completely agree that a mix of the two is the ideal thing. I don't know. I don't know your thoughts, because I think. Do you think that the more you start to explore this hobby, dive deeper and deeper, you start to enjoy that that level of strategy more and more, or do you think that, because obviously more when you start to introduce people to the hobby, most games or lighter games are more tactical, where you react to what's in front of you, or do you feel like even people who've been on the hobbies years and years and years and years would still play games or enjoy games to a point where they can do without any strategy whatsoever?
I think there's a reason that those lighter games are classics, because there's something just satisfying about playing tactically. I mean, it's a rush, it's a high, it's something that you have been presented with this decision and you've made a great one, and that feels great. It's instant reward over long-term reward, and so they hit different spots of the pleasure center of your brain, I'm sure, and that's why they're so successful still. So I think that both are going to stick around, and I think that you may appreciate strategy more the more you play, just because you're being introduced to more games that focus heavily on it. So I know that even now, like playing Maracaibo the other day, and my strategy was get cards that do this, but I don't know what cards are going to show up. So throughout the game, I'm getting cards and I'm playing them tactically based on the cards that I'm drawing as I play. So you have those little highs, those mini rushes, and then that super high at the end where you're executing that strategy to the fullest. So I think that it's both here.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the winner was tactics. So the question we're going to put forward for the next episode is a one more based on the physicality of a board game. So we're going to ask if you had the choice between deluxeified versions of games or components, or the standard retail version, which normally strips back the elaborate stuff that the deluxe games normally offers. Which one would you choose? Are you willing to pay that extra to get the polished, get superfluous, lavish versions of games, or are you happy with just the bare bones functional components that will do what they need to do? Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be unattractive. It doesn't mean that the components and retail versions are not up to scratch and are poor quality. But normally the deluxeified just take that next step and really go above and beyond. So if you had to choose between the two, Mackenzie, would you be willing to pay the extra to get a deluxe version, or would you be happy with just the standard retail version?
I think you know the answer to this, but I pretty much always go with the deluxe version, even when it's not necessary. You totally nailed it on the head there. I think a prime example of this is Atlantis Rising 2nd Edition. The retail version of that game, gorgeous, beautiful. The deluxe version, over the top, like holy crap. But naturally, we're still going to get the deluxe version. So I don't know, there's something because board games are so tactile and it is about that presentation and the things you're interacting with, I think that it's prime to put that extra money into to have this elevated experience. I really like any type of customization to make the game pop out, to make it more thematic, to make it more special of an experience. So I'm always willing to do the extra things to make it deluxe. In addition, if the game is garbage, it's usually easier to sell it if you've got the deluxe version. So that's usually my take on that. And so it usually ends up pretty well. How about you?
I mean, to be honest, the more as time goes on, I am starting to lean away from deluxe versions. It seems to be becoming more and more popular in more games, even games that sometimes are average at best seem to come out with deluxe versions, where I think for me deluxe needs to be, I say needs to be, but my preference for deluxe games would be games that are tried and tested. They've been around for ages, they've got a massive fan base, and when the game is almost in a position where it, say like, yeah, we will have a deluxe version. It's a treat for the people who like it. But sometimes you get games that are completely untested. You've got unknown publishers, unknown designers, and they're getting all these stuff out that is just completely unnecessary. Like, I understand it's complete, it's a nice to have and it's a nice luxury, but that feels like a bit of a disconnect from games. And even particularly because I play so many different types of games now and I'm constantly getting new stuff to the table, sometimes I'm not getting the full benefit, the replayability that I think a deluxe version probably warrants having and needs to have. So generally speaking, I think more often than not, unless it's a class I'm going to have forever until the rest of my days, I would probably choose a retail version now, which has actually been proven because I had the option between backing a deluxe version of the Marrakesh, the new Steffenfeld game, or the retail version. I chose the retail version. Additionally, with the Voidfall. Voidfall, we had the choice between the deluxe version and the standard version. I chose the standard version because I'm content with it.
Dan. So I don't know. I think especially when it comes to Kickstarters, backing the deluxe edition is the thing you gotta do. Like, that's the only reason, in my opinion, to even go for the Kickstarter. Because if you get the standard edition, you might as well wait to retail because it's gonna be marked down significantly. So I mean, in our space, we're trying to get these copies early, so that makes sense. That way we can get them played and get our thoughts out. But oh man, so that's another thing, that Kickstarters lead you to go into those deluxe editions because you're getting all those incentives from the stretch goals and whatnot, and those additional buys that sometimes get unlocked. So, wow, interesting. Okay. So maybe my mindset's going to change. If I didn't have the Side Game LLC library, maybe I wouldn't care. But I do try to make it a priority to say, hey, our library is amazing. Come borrow our games, and that way it's going to be an experience that's worth that extra. So
yeah. And kind of touching on what you said there, the idea of the deluxe Kickstarter stuff, and always being a no-brainer, always go for the deluxe one. But I found that I would always completely agree with you. But I found that probably this year, the gap or the bridge between the deluxe version and the standard version, the price point is becoming wider and wider and wider. Whereas before, the older kind of campaigns would be like, buy the standard version for £40, buy the deluxe amazing edition for £50. So it's like, well, obviously I'll choose the deluxe one because there's so much quality difference and the price is not that much. Whereas now, like, there's deluxe versions that cost £100 more than the standard edition. So that's kind of behind my decision. If that bridge was narrower, then I would always lean towards deluxe because it's a nice thing. And as you said, resale value is always going to hold up better with the deluxe version because normally that's what people want. But hey, it's an interesting debate and a big topic, and I think I'll be quite interested to hear the results for this one. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think the actual result of the people is going to be?
I think deluxe for sure. I think that most people are in that mindset. If they have a chance to get a game, if they're even interested in a game, most people that are interested in a game they're putting that money forward anyway, right? They're probably going to be looking for that best experience. Even if they've played it already, if they're looking to buy it from a past experience, it's probably going to be good enough for them to get that deluxe edition because there's so many games out there that if you're playing and buying a new game, you probably want the best version of it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think deluxe is going to win the poll, but I think we're going to be surprised about how tight it's going to be. I think retail is going to do better than we think it's going to. That's my opinion. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see. So there we go. That's the this or that question of the week: deluxe version or retail version. We'll put that poll out in the next few days. Okay, so moving on to the next segment, which is mechanism appreciation. So this is where we talk about particular gaming mechanisms in a game, well, any game that we like. Could be as complex as you like or as simple as you like. So what are you talking about this episode, Mackenzie?
Okay, so this is a great idea and something that I think is so cool that comes from Mansions of Madness Second Edition. So Mansions of Madness Second Edition is a kind of mansion crawling game where you're going to be going from area to area doing this investigation of some sort in the Arkham Horror universe. But it is completely app driven, which is really, really cool. So the app replaces the need for a dungeon master. It controls a lot of the randomized setup, the combat, everything is handled by this app. So we played the last mission that we had not tried yet. So we've completed all the content now for this game, and that was the Forbidden Journeys. This is the traitor scenario. So this is basically the theme of Unfathomable, the new Fantasy Flight game, where there's going to be deep ones on a ship, and it's your job to suss out who the deep ones are while doing your best to kind of save the crew members of the ship. So that's the blurb from the box. So there's no spoilers here. But what's really cool is in this game, everyone's going to be given a traitor card, and those traitor cards will basically say that, hey, you're trying to sabotage the mission, or hey, you're trying to win the mission, and they'll give you kind of specifics on what to do. So right off the bat, very cool, very different, because generally Mansions of Madness is a strict co-op. So I like the idea of implementing this traitor system into a game. And I think it does it in some really cool ways. So this scenario is not my favorite. I had some issues with the water. A lot of times on your turn, you were just like moving 1 or 2 spaces, and that just feels really bad. But they had some really interesting and really cool mechanics that I hope appear in later games. And those have to do with how the traitor is handled in the app. So sometimes the app will say, give this to player X, and that player takes it, and they will secretly do something in the app. And then they have to read out loud the text after their choice. And that could be anything. Maybe you set fire to something. Maybe you sent a crewmate out to go find other crewmates and they died. So it's you have no idea what that person put into the app. And they can lie. They can say whatever they want. The thing that they type in the app might not do anything right now, but maybe in like 2 turns or 3 turns down the line, something will happen based on those decisions. Another really cool thing is they'll sometimes have you do skill checks where you'll take the app and the app will say, roll up to this many dice based on whatever your stat is, and then total up your successes and no one gets to see you. And so everybody closes their eyes, you roll the dice and you do your thing secretly. And then afterwards you say, oh man, I rolled really poorly. I only got 1 success. And maybe you didn't roll any dice or something like that. Like, oh, I whiffed. Oh, I don't have any clues. And you could really sell this and be like, oh yeah. And it's so well done because no one knows exactly what you're doing. And you have this opportunity to be very manipulative using the app as a vessel for that. And I think that is so cool. It does a lot of neat things with this traitor mechanic, and I'm excited to see it implemented in new systems in new games. Like I said, I wasn't super impressed with this scenario as a whole, but I'm excited to see how it continues further on. So that's Mansions of Madness Horrific Journeys. So that's particularly the traitor in the app. So any ideas? Have you played Mansions of Madness, Dan?
No, I've never played Mansions of Madness. Not normally the cup of my cup of tea, but I think there's so much potential for using apps in this way. I think despite more and more games using apps to benefit, stuff like creative ways like this where you can introduce that whole new element of social deduction or deception, or as you said, I love that idea of stuff you do now affects turns and turns and turns later, and the fact that it can be managed and kind of facilitated by an app is, again, the potential for stuff like that is just fascinating. And I think it's just, again, scratching the surface with stuff like that to be explored. And I know like Manchester Madness is leading the charge of app integration in games. I've heard nothing but huge praise for the way that Madness's app works, and so much life, so much potential to a cardboard and plastic game. It's fascinating. I know some people are against it. I'm not against it because of reasons like this. So yeah, I love that idea, and yeah, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, quite impressed with the system as a whole. Not my favorite game by any means. Not one that I am recommending to people, really. But it is a very unique experience, and I think it's definitely worth the try.
Cool. Yeah, understandable. Okay, so the game I'm talking about is poles apart from Manchester Madness. It's a very simple card game called Q-Birds, and I suppose the mechanism in particular I'm talking about is one of the main mechanisms you use and one of the only mechanisms you use. And that is this idea of the way you acquire the birds in the first place. So this is a simple set collection game, as you have a hand of cards all depicted by these different birds. And the idea is you're trying to collect other birds in order to play them down in sets, in order to race to get to either 7 different birds, or in order to play, I think it's 2 sets of 3 birds. But the way you do this is quite interesting, because obviously the birds are going to be your points and your winning criteria. But in order to acquire those birds, you need to play them on the table to collect other ones. So you basically have this row of, or this, there you go, like a set of four rows of 3 cards, and it can get more than that. And then you're going to use these cards in your hand to almost trap the birds in between them. So if I had a pair of parrots, I could put one on this side of this duck card, one on this side of this magpie card, and collect all the ones in between them and add them to my hand. And then the market is going to be filled up with the ones that you've just played. But I love this fact that when you play these cards to collect the ones in the middle, you have to play all of them. So if I had 4 parrots, I'd have to play 4 of them at once, maybe 2 on this side, 2 on that side, in order to collect the ones in the middle. And that, of course, will leave opportunities for my opponents in order to capture the ones that I've just played. So even though I've already maybe collected my parrot that I need for my set, then I'm leaving an opportunity there for my opponents to play a pair of their birds and collect my parrots. So it's got this real dynamic market feeling, which actually really does ring bells or remind me of a game like Jaipur, where you have this constantly changing market. But the fact that this one is player driven rather than, top decking from a deck and refilling it back up, I think it actually adds quite a lot of depth here. And initially I thought, this is a fine game. It's okay, a simple set collection game. But the more I played this one, I thought, oh, actually the decisions here I'm making are much more meaningful than I thought, because for those reasons, I'm playing these cards here. Sometimes I only have one of them, which means I can maybe trap a couple of birds, and then I might have another one in my hand which let me capture another set of birds. So you have this kind of forward momentum where you want to be collecting birds not just to play them, but you want to be collecting birds to collect other birds. And it's nothing to explain, but the way you kind of string 3 turns together at times, and still being wary that the market is changing and other people are digging into that market as well, is actually really interesting. And it's actually growing on me quite a bit. And I think this is quite an underrated little game because of that capture and trapping mechanism of the birds. So yeah, one that I'd definitely recommend checking out if you like your simple little card games. It's very affordable, plays ultra quickly, and again has that good market hustle and bustle feel to it, as it's constantly changing, and that's all driven by the players. So have you tried this one, Mackenzie, or are you interested in trying it?
I have not, but that set collection on multiple levels sounds really, really cool. I really like that. I also really like the art. It's whimsical and cute. Yeah, looks cute. Looks like somebody took a Lego set and went at it with a bird watching book. So I'm excited. This looks fun, looks cute, and I'm always a fan of trying solid filler games.
Yeah, that's how I describe it. It's definitely solid, and I think it's one to worth checking out, because again, it's so cheap, and just get it on your repertoire and see what it's like. Because I think most of the people who've played this do actually rate it quite highly. Wow, and it's a bit of an unsung gem. That's Q-Birds. Okay, so moving on from mechanism appreciation, we're going on to the random game generator. So this is where we hit the random button on Board Game Geek and see what we come up with. Normally, it's something that nobody wants to hear about, but it's still fun regardless. So let's get started and see what we have this episode. So as always, we kind of take a bit of a speculative guess and see what we're going to come up with. Are we thinking some obscure promo card again, Mackenzie?
I'm thinking an expansion of a game that we know. That's what I'm going to guess. That's pretty unlikely, but we'll go for it. Expansion to a game we know.
I'm going to say it's going to be a war game. That's a long.
That is also pretty good. That's pretty significant. Yeah, Mike, spin that wheel. Here we go.
Okay.
If it'll spin, it might be jammed.
Here we go.
What is this?
We have a game called Dog. It's actually okay. 6.4 out of 10, 1997. And this is okay. So I don't know who the designer is. This has got Dennis Lauhausen as the artist, who actually is the artist to a lot of Euro games nowadays, a lot of Steffenfeld games. Okay, so this is. Let's read the description here. So we've got management. We've
Yeah.
got movement points. Take that. Team-based game and track movement. Okay, so it says
Yeah,
dog
it
has
looks like it's sorry. That's what it looks like.
okay. Yeah. Sorry, family of games, but with a few noticeable twists. Similar to TAC, Super Toc 4, Super Toc 6, Toc 6, and Super Toc 8, all those famous games. So there we go. Yeah, so it sounds like a simple take that game. Is that right? I've not actually played Sorry, so I don't know what
So
that.
sorry is essentially you draw. I don't think you may draw, or you may have a hand of cards. You play a card, you move around a track. If you land exactly on somebody's piece, you say sorry, and you send their piece home. And that's really what it is. You move around. You're trying to get all your characters back to the start, Parcheesi style. You go around the board. If you make it all the way back, you got to get into your home section. Once you get all your people back in your home section, game's over. You win. So very simple, straightforward.
Okay. Yeah, now you've said it, I think I have played it when I was a kid. Got some decent ratings here, actually. Some people liking it, some people certainly not liking it. Here we go.
You know,
This player
believe
here
it or
might do
not,
too.
I had a friend that he and his wife actually played a game very similar to this. I don't know if it's called this, but very similar to this, and they love it. This is like a game that they consistently bring out with families and at parties and stuff. I couldn't believe it. I thought that was so wild, and that was just something that they played. And when they described the game to me, I was like, "It's sorry, right? It's Parcheesi," and they're like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I was like, "What? This is so maybe that's a thing." This is a big hit because it's so straightforward. You just move the pieces, and this one looks like it's card driven as well. So there's a bit of control. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I just want to read this comment. Just going to read this comment here from
Okay.
Laleluum. It says, you got dealt a hand of cards without the option to leave your starting area, and there you go. Do nothing for a few minutes and watch your team lose. What a horrible, horrible game design. Surely it can be fun under the right circumstances, but I'd rather play many other games. There we go. So he's not a fan. But there we go. That's Dog. And as Mike Cross says here, I think we're all agreed that it's an instant purchase. There we go. So there we go. That's the random game of the episode, Dog, which is a variation of the game Sorry. So moving on from the random game, we are going to go on to why is in your collection. So this is a segment where we talk about a game that either of us own. So I'll pick a game from Mackenzie's collection. He'll pick one from my collection, and we'll explain why they're in our collection for one reason or other. You know, do they not like them? Are they curious about them? So that's normally what this goes back to. So Mackenzie, what have you got for me?
Okay, Dan. So this game appeared on your top 50 list recently, and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that this was so high on your list. I really couldn't. This is one that we had for a while. Tried to do my best to enjoy it. Tried to do my best to play it. Ended up selling it because I just couldn't find the pleasure for it. It just did not do it for me. I really want to know why this is in your collection and why is it so highly rated for you. This is Tawatinsuyu. In my opinion, the weakest of all these T games, just because of not only the complexity of the game, because there's the ridiculous amount of choices, but also just the not very satisfying payoff of those complex choices. I felt like this game was not worth the effort. This game was complicated for the sake of complexity, and I felt like the things you were doing, the tapestry weaving, the battles, I thought they were very underwhelming. Not something that I really want to enter. The engine building was not that exciting, and I thought that the game was not worth everything that you had to do to put into it. I was playing it solo a lot, just to see if I was missing something, because the solo mode works extremely well. Tried playing multiplayer, and it took about 5 hours to play with 4 people, and it took 2.5 to play with 2, and I couldn't believe it. And the things we were doing were not that exciting and incredible. Tell me, explain to the audience, explain yourself.
Okay, so to be honest, all the stuff you've said there were concerns of mine. I thought this is a massively intimidating game. There's a lot of symbology, a lot of iconography. Some of it isn't the best. There's some rules here that probably could have been left out. But because of that, every time I play this one, I've had an absolute blast with it. I think it's great. I've tried to go into that. So I like the idea of when you take worker placement spots, you can build around them and get more and more actions when you claim the spots around them. So the game does have a forward momentum where you're getting powerful actions as the game goes on. I like the different paths of victory you can go down. again, you can do the tapestry thing. You can completely ignore that if you wanted to. There is a bit of luck element to it, I suppose, but you've got some mitigation tools there where I believe you can draw a few and then keep a couple, so you've got a little bit of flexibility. And I kind of like that engine building where at certain points in the game you just get a little kick of resource, nothing major. But I think the thing I liked about, or kind of pushed it over the edge for me, was I like the card system where you got to have the matching cards with the matching spots, and that merged with the with that idol mechanism where if you collect these idols, not only would you get to use the worker placement spot, you'd also get the bonus on the cards as well. And I thought that it all kind of built towards this crescendo, and as the game went on, you'd start being a lot more stronger than you were at the beginning. And I also like that switching point where you want to start selling your idols in order to climb up the tracks and temples. So I thought it actually did all come together quite well. I do agree with you that it's probably in fact, it is my least favorite of the T series, but that's still high praise. I mean, I still rate it highly.
Ooh, spoilers for the rest of your top 50. Oof.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I think people know that anyway. But yeah, it's definitely a complex gamer's game. I don't think this is a game that's ever going to change anyone's mind in terms of not liking Euro games. This is going to just make them. It's going to enforce those decisions, isn't it? It's not. It's quite stuffy at times, as Mackenzie said. It's not the most. It's not the smoothest. It's a bit clunky in space. There's some rules here that maybe didn't need to be there, but I still enjoyed the experience as a whole. I like it. It's going to stay around. I enjoyed the first play of it. When I played it again, I liked it even more. So normally that's not the case. I kind of am interested by things, then it goes down. But I don't know. I still love it.
One last question for you here, Dan.
Yeah.
So my last question has to do with the randomness in this game. So this game has some randomness in it that reminds me of something like Paladins of the West Kingdom, where you have this very tight system, and then you're drawing like some random cards for resolution. So the combat cards, there are some that are just clearly better than others, and every time you get a combat card, you're usually drawing just from the top of the deck. Same thing with some of those action cards. There are some that are just have clearly better rewards than others. And then the tapestries, as you touched on earlier, there are some that sometimes you're just gonna get one that doesn't fit. How do you feel about that? You can. Oh man, you obviously. I'm holding back my big thoughts here. Like I just feel like you can sack into some dumb stuff in this game, and that's how it feels. Like you have this very solid, crunchy, thinky thing, and then you can also sack into these very key aspects of this game.
Yeah, I completely get you. I suppose maybe up to this point, I've not been burnt by that. Maybe that might be the reason why I've not felt myself ever in a position where that's affected the outcome of the game. But obviously, doing this or playing this time and time again. Now, I haven't played it a tremendous amount, but when I have played it, I've enjoyed it. But maybe play testing it more and more, that those issues might become more apparent, and that could sink it for me. But as for now, I've not experienced it, and I like the way the game works. So
okay.
I completely understand your criticisms, and to be honest, I can't really dispute them, but I still enjoy it regardless of that. So yeah, that's.
Well, I hope you have a great time with it, and I hope it's one you do continue to enjoy. Like you said, I hope it keeps on going up for you.
Yeah, I think I don't see it ever being amongst my top 20, 25, anything like that, and where it gets to the absolute incredible games. But just on that bracket below, I think it's fantastic. So yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I've got a game for you that I would have thought I would have looked into this, but for some reason I haven't. This bunch, or I think it's a series of games, is completely evaded me. I don't know anything about them. From the name of it itself, it sounds like a kind of game that I'd enjoy. This is a game called Margraves of Valeria.
Okay.
What is this game about? And is this something that I would like?
Okay, so Margraves of Valeria is actually kind of built on lots of pre-existing systems and mechanics. Margraves in particular is based on the Concordia mechanic. So on your turn, you're going to be using an action card in your hand to navigate across the board. Pretty much every action card has some form of movement on it, as well as potentially like a resource or a bonus or something that you can use it for. So that's the first thing that you can use a card for. Otherwise, you can use the card for its printed effect. So each card is multi-use. It has an effect, and then it has like a movement option. So that's the core of the game. You play a card, you do one of the things. In addition, each of the cards has a symbol that's going to be scoring for you at the end based on these influence tracks that you're kind of whittling up. So that's the core system. But the game itself has you moving around this board, collecting resources, building these large outposts to gain influence, and you're just trying to gain influence on all these tracks because these tracks will multiply the number of your symbols for that score. Now, this isn't an incredibly highly ranked game for me. This is probably a 7-ish in my opinion. I think it's good. I think it's fine. I think that there are a lot of good systems, but this falls into some of the pitfalls that games like this do normally fall into, where normally you're not really caring about the cards that you're drafting. You're just caring about like their effects. You're caring just about the scoring. And that definitely is present here. It's why I like Aquatica a little bit more than this, because you're taking the cards for the powers of the cards as opposed to just the scoring. But the system here is very solid. You move around, you interact with the board, and you're collecting things in order to move on lots of different tracks. So it's got this really cool battle system as well, where you can move and attack these characters. You can spend knights, and when the knights are killed, you actually place them into this grid. And once certain columns and rows on this grid are filled, you're going to get some extra resources and bonuses. And so I really like that system here. I think it's pretty fun. But the game itself is move your pawn around, do actions, and just kind of explore, build up stuff, collect symbols and resources. It's a fun time. It's one that I enjoy. I think that this is a solid game. This is from the Valeria series. So Valeria has like a Machikoro style game where you're going to be rolling dice and collecting resources. It has a card version of like Lords of Waterdeep where you're collecting these different adventures and quests and trying to match it to your lord. And then this one is more of like their, hey, this is a bit heavier style Euro game that uses some mechanics that you're familiar with. So this is a neat one that has a cool theme, fantastic artwork. I really like the Miko's art. I think this is great. It's really the biggest reason that I was like, ooh, let's go check this one out. But a friend introduced me to this one, and it's one that I do enjoy. I think it's fun. So that's Margraves of Valeria. I don't know if I'll change your mind. I wouldn't be a very strong recommendation for me. I rate this and Mansions of Madness about the same. I think it's a fun experience, but not one that you necessarily need to prioritize.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I don't know what came first, but this almost looks like it's trying to capitalize off the success of like the West Kingdom games or the Shem Phillip designs, because even obviously it's got the same artist, it's got the same kind of tagline, with the with the subline as well. Maybe it's trying to do that, but it just for me looks like it just doesn't look like it has anything incredibly unique or interesting about it, and it looks like it's trying to almost capitalize off that kind of success of those games. Is that the case, or?
So I think that this one in particular is more. I think this came out around the same time as Architects,
Okay.
but this is just the Miko style. Like this is how he draws, right? And in particular in this like night setting. So I think it's very similar there. But I think this is taking a lot of familiar mechanics. But I think the most unique thing it does is that battle system. So I think that battle system is probably the most unique in getting those rewards from your combats. So I think that's probably the newest thing it does. But if you're looking for something extremely fresh and different, this is probably not what you're looking for.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not had my mind changed on this one, so that's fair enough. I mean, sometimes these only has like a weight of 2.5 out of 5 or something, so generally a bit lighter than what I'm generally looking for. But obviously, people who do like it a lot because it's rated 7.7 out of 10, which is pretty damn high, for for an average rating. So hey, there we go. That's Margraves of Valeria. At least I know a bit more about it now. Okay, so moving on then. So we have the A to Z sections. This is where we talk about a light game and a more involved game of a certain category. So this episode we are on letter M. So Mackenzie, what is your light game beginning with the letter M?
So my light game is one that does not get talked a lot. Its older brother does. So this is the Mind Extreme. So this is the sequel to the original Mind, a game of trying to have this psychic link between the other players at the table, where you'll be playing cards into a pile at the same time, trying to go from lowest to highest. So the standard game, that's it. That's really all you're doing. You're doing your best to kind of get the cadence of the game, play cards in good timing. This one amps up the difficulty dramatically. So what you're going to be doing is you'll have 2 piles of cards. One is going to be going up, one is going to be going down. It does sound like just a convoluted version of the first one, and it is. However, my wife and I have crushed the first one, and so we really like the challenge of the second one. And that's what we really like about it, is that it is difficult. The challenges are really cool because sometimes you'll be playing face down into certain piles. Sometimes you'll be playing with certain cards face up. It is a very very unique. No, I wouldn't say unique. It's a very good twist that increases the difficulty of the original Mind game. So I do like this system. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that this is the one that I'm going to be pulling out because I normally only play this game with my wife. So this is the one that we'll end up pulling just because we like that challenge. We like that additional twist to it. So we have not beat this one yet. We consistently make it to like the second to last level, but we always lose on that second to last one. So it's one that we still are trying to finish, but one that we enjoy. And that's the Mind Extreme.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I'm with you with the Mind there. I think I had that moment when when the Mind came out where I played it a lot, and we got to a point with it where I'd play it with my girlfriend and a couple of our uni friends, and we got so good at it that we actually beat it at 4 players. And since then, I've not really had the incentive to go back to it, or at least lost that level of interest. When you want to or have the desire to beat something. Whereas I suppose something like the Mind Extreme could just add that extra layer and to keep that interest going along. But I actually like the Mind. I think people who criticize it are a bit unfair on it because it's just a really fun experience and creates a lot of fun moments. So yeah, the Mind Extreme there. The lighter game that I want to talk about is a game called, if I remember what I put down, is Mandala. So Mandala, a game that I've talked about a lot.
Oh yeah,
recently.
oh yeah.
I should know this one really. This is this game is outstanding. I'll never go about talking about this one. So apologies if you've heard me go on about this game, but it is that good. So Mandala is a 2-player game. Only for 2 players. You can't play it solo or any more than that. And it's a very simple hand management style game and almost a set collection style game as you were trying to acquire these different cards, which are these weird looking square cards with different mandalas on them. And then you are not using these cards to play in the middle of the table, which kind of is the area where you're going to get your cards from to get points, but you're also using cards to bid for those in the first place. But you can never have duplicate cards. So if you're bidding with something, it means that your opponent can't bid for that type of card, and it means that type of card can't be in the middle either. So it's quite a race to get your cards submitted to a certain spot before you do, because you can get locked out of areas. And when you end up getting all these different colors on these different mandalas, then that mandala will explode, and then points will be divided out in terms of collecting the cards. And the order in which you take these cards is fantastic because they get allocated to different spots on your board, and the first card you take gets you a single point. The second type of card you take gets you 2 points for each, and then 3 points, and so on. So it has this really cool scoring where sometimes cards aren't worth much to you, but it can be worth loads to your opponent, and you've got to use that to your advantage and try to burn off cards that you think your opponent might want. And it's such a smooth game, one that has a tremendous amount of depth, but still feels like it's a nice filler, fun experience. Only takes about 20 minutes to play, and it is just an absolute gift of a game. So if you like 2-player games, this is, in my opinion, an absolute essential. Some questionable production choices here with the old tea towel as a playing mat, and the cards are a bit annoying because they are square and you can't hold them as well as you probably like to. But the gameplay completely transcends that. It is a remarkable 2-player game. That is Mandala, a high recommendation.
So I've been trying to find this game and I can't, and I'm so mad because it feels like this is in that upper echelon of 2-player only small games. And so I've been looking for it, can't find it. So when I find a copy, you'll see it being covered here. So I'm excited to give it a try and get my thoughts on it because I hear nothing but positives from you, from others. I gotta get my hands on this one. So super excited to give it a try. It looks great. I love this. It looks super awesome. Super excited.
Yeah. Confident you like it.
Perfect.
Okay, heavy game.
All right, my heavy game is a huge dice chuck fest, giant fantasy world. This is Midara Unintentional Malum Act 1. This is a huge story-driven game where the book itself is about that thick. It's gigantic. You're going to be reading probably like 20 minutes of text in between missions, but they have this amazing narration app that comes free with the game. So coolest thing, you just hit play, listen to it while you're setting up the scenario. Super awesome. So I love the story. The story is actually compelling, something that I enjoy listening to. Characters are fun. It's a great cast, and you'll be taking these characters from mission to mission. So the game starts you off in this very unique world. It takes place in the other side of this portal, and this portal connects the real world to this fantasy world. And it's kind of neat. they've got this really cool government system where they regulate the use of the portal. They say, hey, if you're going to come into the portal, you have to be ready to be able to fight. And so they have like a citizenship test essentially, and everybody is having to train to be able to actually go out into the fantasy world, because they don't just want to send you out there and have you die to something. It'd be a shame if you just got to this new place and got killed by like a slime or something. So they run you through this series of tests before you can claim citizenship to this land. So I really like this idea of all of these newcomers to this fantasy world doing their best so that they can take their place in this area. And so you're doing your best to get through this. And that's the start of the mission. I won't get into anything else. But the system itself is a heavy dice-driven game. On your turn, you'll have stamina points that you'll spend. You'll use them to move, attack. And when you attack, you look at the values on your item cards, and those are going to correspond to the dice. And the dice start weak and get stronger, so the numbers get bigger. You're also going to have symbols on them. So similarly to games like Imperial Assault, you'll roll the dice and you'll use these icons on the dice to activate the abilities of your items. We talked about this before. There was a t-shirt that I really liked in this game where you can spend your items and exhaust them to use abilities like free counters or to dodge. You also, when you attack, can trigger the symbols to do extra damage. So you have these cool choices. When you roll, you have an option where you can kind of overexert yourself to roll an extra die that's just full of symbols, but it can potentially make you miss. So you always have these choices when it comes to prioritizing damage or effects. And I really like this system. So you have that idea of, do I go for the accurate hit or do I go for extra damage and potential swings? So this is a great system. It's very quick, but it's a little bit of a beast to learn, because the first scenario, you have to know everything for that first scenario. It's not difficult. It's just you need to know the procedures, because everything is available from turn one. And I really like that about this game, because it allows you to learn in a non-threatening setting, as opposed to something like Gloomhaven, where a lot of people die in that first scenario in Gloomhaven in the original. So I've heard a lot of people just stop playing that game because they found that first scenario so brutal. So I know that I'm experiencing that right now in role player adventures, but it has that has that fail forward system. So I guess it's not as awful. So that's Midara Unintentional Malum Act 1. Fantastic story, dungeon crawl game, one that I'm really enjoying.
Okay, cool. And despite being so dice driven, I see the weight on the BGG page is 4 out of 5, so quite heavy, quite involved.
It is very involved. Not only do you have the dice combat, but you have like these AI cards that are going to be pretty crazy with how they react. You have lots of little exceptions to things, lots of tiny effects. So I think that's where the majority of the weight comes, is from all these extra little effects here and there.
Right. Okay. But still, by the sounds of it, the gameplay still warrants all that extra learning.
I agree. It's pretty dang fun. It's the gameplay itself is very straightforward. You move, you hit stuff, and so that's it. And so it's about the small things, I think, are what make it exciting. They make it thematic. There's even rules in the game where you can throw each other like over crevices and be like, "Here, go!" And so and you could, if you trip, you fall into the crevice and you die, or things like that. Or if you have someone on the other side of the crevice, they can catch you. So there's rules for like everything that you think you could do. It exists, which is really cool. So I like this one. It's pretty fantastic.
Okay. Cool. That's Midara. The more involved game that I want to talk about is a game called Monasterium. Monasterium is a game that actually came out to relative fanfare last year. I think there might be some distribution issues with this one. I think it's available in Europe, but I think in the States it's might not be the case. So this is a midweight Euro. It's a dice drafting game. And it's I think the way that the dice drafting works in this game is pretty unique, and I've not seen it done ever before. So, therefore, it's completely unique. But you are basically rolling a bunch of dice, and then you're picking one of those pit values that you've rolled. Then you're allocating it to the bottom of the board here on these different locations, and then it will go to your opponent's turn. So between all the players, you are actually building the action pools of the drafting spots before the game or before the round even starts. So that's a whole new dimension of a dice drafting game, where again the dice pots are normally just all rolled and then they're allocated, but this one you actually have a bit more control and a bit more mitigation to what you might want to build towards. And then in turn, you're going to be drafting up to 3 dice from these different spots and taking corresponding actions, such as traveling down this main road here, visiting these different churches and monasteries, trying to send your kind of clergymen into them in area control style things, and trying to collect these stained glass windows and add them to your individual player boards here. where you can start to get kind of connection bonuses and more points. But what I really love about this game is that when you choose to take a certain action, or when you choose to invest more and more in your player board, when you take a particular value of die from the drafting pool, you can actually increase your options as the game goes on by removing these workers from your board, and therefore, each, initially your 4 die might only be worth a rosary bead, but as you unlock more of these workers, you can start, maybe doing a double move action or taking one of these picture frames. So you have more flexibility as the game goes on. It's 3 pretty concise rounds in this game, so it does have a nice forward momentum where you have to get things done pretty quickly, and if you don't, you're gonna go without. There's some public objectives which people are racing to get. And it is a really nice game that's well-rounded. It's a great one that I think's gone under the radar. Should be more appreciated. Nothing really wrong with it at all. Is it the best of the dice drafters? Probably not, but it's got enough going on in building and just how quick and accessible it is. So I think this one is a treat to play, and I would recommend giving it a go if this is your style of game. So that is Monasterium.
I'll be honest, never seen this one, never heard about this one, so all news to me. I do like that system of dice drafting, though. I think it looks like it works well here.
Yeah, it's just something a little bit different to just give it that edge amongst the vast competition of different Euro dice drafters out there. So yeah, that's Monasterium, one that are gone a bit underrated. I know the people who do like it a lot. So that is our A to Z for this episode. So we're just going into the last segment now. So did we have a poll question from the last episode, Kenzie? Or
we did have a poll question. It was, how do you find gamers to game with? And so that was our poll question there. So could it be from your large group of friends that you already have? Could it be from internet websites, so things like Facebook or gaming groups? Do you just walk into your local game store and see what's up? So the poll was, how do you find people?
Okay.
And I know that last time... Oh, go ahead.
To ask what was the outcome.
Okay, let me pull it up 1 second. So I know that last time we talked about our personal experiences where you kind of evolved through playing Magic with your friends, and then I move all over the place all the time, so I tend to use websites like Facebook to just find games to play with. So here we had that 78% of our population here found their gaming groups through pre-existing friends. Our second place was other with 13%. And we even had some comments here kind of explaining what that meant. A lot of people say they just game with whoever. They ask people, hey, if gaming comes up in conversation, they'll start talking about it. And then we had some people saying that their group is solo. So that makes sense. That would be on the other category. And then game stores and online gaming groups were in the bottom there, with non-gaming community centers at the very bottom. So I guess if you're looking for gaming people, you're obviously going to go into gaming areas, so that makes sense.
So yeah, there we go. Sounds like most board game fanatics are evangelizing their friends and family from all different parts of their life, which was kind of the case for me, I suppose. Okay, so I think Mackenzie and I made an agreement that we're going to try and, we're probably moving forward, we're going to just stick with the one segment with the this or that section, and I think because we've run out of questions, basically. But we will be kind of, dwelling on more of our next section a bit more and spending a bit more time talking about what we're kind of looking forward to playing before the next. So, anything you're particularly interested or eager to play before we get together again?
So right now, I'm pretty excited. The new expansion for Paladins of the West Kingdom should be here. I hope that it increases my opinion of the multiplayer game, because right now I find that very lacking, but I enjoy the solo mode. I do want to dive more into role-player adventures to see if it does get better over time by increasing my character's abilities and whatnot. So hopefully it's not just I'm going to die every round, because there's like this death marker and you cross it off every time you die. And I hope that I don't get to the end. I don't know what's going to happen. So, oh geez. So hopefully that ends up being okay. And then Cartographer's Heroes, I've been enjoying that. So hoping to play more of that as well. I think it's just a very simple twist. So I'm excited to dive into the expansion maps for that. So excited for those games in particular. Lots of new Kickstarter deliveries. I also want to get my hands on Gollum. I want to try that one out. My friend that brought us copies of Boonlake and Messina also has a copy of Gollum. So I'm going to see if I can get some games of that in as well. So excited to give that one a try.
Amazing. Yes, the Golem's still unavailable here in the UK, so
Gotcha.
just waiting for it to be printed by somebody. I know it is coming sooner or later, but yeah, I'm with you actually with Cartographer's Heroes. We did get that box in, but we haven't tried it yet, so it'll be interesting to try some of the new setups. But individual games, I got the new Kramer and Kiesling Savannah Park, so I'll be trying that tomorrow, I believe. Yeah, quite excited to try that one. Very family-friendly, puzzly style game. But normally with Kramer and Kiesling games, they have a bit more to them than might first appear. Again, they're quite very simple mechanically, but because of the puzzle aspect to it, it's a bit more to it. Also, I think we're going to be trying Brawl Service, which is an older Alexander Pfister game, in the next few days. Never tried it. Have you tried it?
I have not. That's another one on the list. So my friend that has Golem has Broom Service as well. So that's like on our docket when we go play. So excited. Ooh, yeah, that's awesome.
A bit different for a Pfister game, yeah. Not the normal big sprawling Euro. It's more of a pick up and deliver style thing. So with some card play, looks quite interesting. And we still need to get Jaws of the Lion to the table. So hopefully by the end of the next episode, I'll get Jaws of the Lion played, and hopefully a couple more games of A Feast for Odin too, so I can lock those thoughts into place. So yeah, that
sounds good. It, really. Exciting.
Yeah. I just wanted to cover a question, well, for you to answer as well, Mackenzie, that Ryan put or submitted. So Ryan asked if there's time for a question. And when you play, when a game plays better at a specific player count, do you rate the game based on the experience at that player count or an average across all the player counts? Good question, Ryan. How do you approach this this idea, Mackenzie?
So this is I agree. I think this is a great question. And this most recently came up actually on my review for Tsukuyomi Full Moon Down. I think that game is not very good at 1 or 3 or more, but I think a 2-player game is really, really good. So I made sure that when I did that, I even did a separate review for it. I make sure that I give the game its due credit and really take it for its best approach. I'm not going to rate a cooperative, like social deduction game at a 2-player count, right? It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to put it in a losing position. I'm going to play the game and rate it based on where it's best and where it shines, and then make sure that I explain in that review, say, hey, it doesn't work well at these. Usually I'm going to rate it at that player count that I enjoy it at, because that's the experience I'm going to play it at. I'm not going to play it at the crap player count. It's not going to happen. So I definitely will rate it at the player count that's ideal and the way that I have fun with it. So I'll rate my enjoyment on there. So my rating for Tsukuyomi right now is an 8, actually, because I think that 2-player game, that's the way that I play it. I enjoy it as a 2-player at 8. But if I were to rate it on kind of just the other modes, it'd probably be like a 5 or a 6. I really don't think it's that good. So I definitely will rate it based on its ideal situation.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, I always do things on the optimal player count. Because that's where I'll play it. I have so many games, so if I want another player count, I'll play something else. But it's a really good question, but I wouldn't consider lowering a rating because all the other player counts aren't optimal. But I think that's a perfectly valid approach to do it. So no criticisms to anybody who does. But yeah, personally, I'll always base it based on the optimal. You know, for example, my favorite game, El Grande, is amazing at 4 or 5 players. Not so good at the lower player counts. So that says it all, and I still rate it a 10 out of 10. So that's to answer your question there, Ryan. And just another comment here from Enrique, saying, I think this was us talking about the deluxification of some games.
Yeah.
So he said games like In the Year of the Dragon, Kalos, El Grande are beautiful just the way they are. And he Kickstarter introduced toys to the hobby, I suppose one way of saying it, which are impossible to resist. So yeah, I'm completely with you, Enrique. I actually love the really stripped back, bare bones games that are just no frills, just not ugly, but they've not got all this bling and stuff that it doesn't really need. So yeah, I'm with you. I think they have their own unique style of beauty. What are your thoughts on games like that, Mackenzie? Do you think there's still a space for it, or do you think that times change and it's going to hurt itself if it doesn't look as flash as some of the newer games?
I think there's definitely room for both. So I'm a big fan of games that are very stripped back. I love card games that are just like a single deck of cards. I love stuff like that. But I also do like that big, that overproduced version of a game. I like the Kickstarter components. I like being immersed in this world through the different things that I'm interacting with on the board. So I like both. I think there's definitely room for both. And I think that you can definitely pick the one that you enjoy more, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing nowadays. There's so many things coming out. There is something for everybody. So pick your poison, choose what you want, and you'll and certainly, even in some games, you have the choice. Do you want to go? Well, which is the next question? Do you want to go retail or deluxe? So you actually have that freedom, and you're not pigeonholed to go a certain route. So yeah, that wraps up another episode of Corporate Cardboard. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, I appreciate that we do this very early if it's in the States, and thank you for Mackenzie as always for getting up very early. And I really appreciate it, not only for you guys who've joined us, but also for the guys who watch in slow time when you can. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of Corporate Cardboard. So goodbye from me.
See you later, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye-bye.